When we're thinking about language comprehension and production, you've got the idea of speech perception. And you see a spectrogram there. It's a really sensitive instrument. And this is something that dates back to the 40s probably. And of course, these days we have really good software that'll measure these sorts of things. It's fairly interesting. But basically, it's a rendering or a drawing or a graph, I guess you could say, of the way that output looks as people are voicing different words. So you can see dog, dig, dug, deep, and do. They have different expressions in terms of their sound frequency and loudness and volume, etc. Subtle differences there. And a spectrogram can measure these things with some degree of precision. Depends on the expense of the instrument that you're willing to part with. So now, visual cues affect perception of phonemes. In other words, as I'm looking at a mouth saying something, I'm likely to fill in the blanks, even if they've uttered a phoneme that wasn't correct. Or I may hear phonemes that are not there. So, for instance, if a voice speaker actually says cigarette, I'll hear it as cigarette if it fits the context, as your author points out in one example. And there's a formal experiment of that. Here's another thing that the spectrograms have told us is that people do not pause between words. So, as the sentence says here, we don't pause between two words when we speak. And this is the way the output looks. So there's no acknowledgement that these words are separate. They are different completely. So, but nonetheless, they run together. In terms of their output, a person that didn't know English or they came from another planet could not tell that there was a sentence here. It looks like one utterance, as though it may come from a whale, if you will. Now, there's a clever experiment talked about in your text that people, speaking of top-down perception of language, people tend to fill in blanks, I guess is the way to say it. So if I hear it was found that the eel was on the axle, I fill in WH. It was found that the eel was on the shoe, I fill in H. It was found that the eel was on the orange, of course, I fill in P. Or if it was found that the eel was on the table, of course, T. So, or what would that be? What is on the table? I do not know. I should know that. That's embarrassing. I'm so sorry, I'm drawing a blank there. What would fit on a table? Jeez, I'm embarrassed. Meal. Oh, that wasn't so obvious at all. The meal was on the table. The other ones are fairly obvious. So, anywho, the speaker will fill in the blanks in a top-down fashion, knowing the context in such a way that they know, that they know the context, and therefore they quote unquote hear the phoneme and fill in those blanks. And that's this idea of top-down processing. But the idea of speech perception is really molecular. It's amazing how finely you can calibrate these machines so that you can see the length and strength of their utterance. Do you know, I've often been fascinated to do a study like this in which people pronounce singular or plural words. So we got one sheep, two sheeps. And I often wonder, because they're conjuring, in the case of sheeps, which would actually be sheep, one sheep, two sheep, I wonder if it would be the case that they say the second sheep longer because you've got two sheep in mind. Little things like that would be interesting to demonstrate from the sake of a spectrogram. Although I'm not saying that it's terribly easy to do, and maybe the machine isn't finely calibrated enough, but you could betray the mental image that you have of something with the utterance.